Hi everybody, Dave Hunt here, owner of GameMasters Guild. Today, I'm going to do a review on a new role-playing game that just came out. And it's actually a request from one of my long-distance regulars. So let's take a look now at the Power Rangers Role-Playing Game. Now before the video, I flipped through this book and I was checking it out. And granted, I'm going to be up front, I missed Power Rangers. I missed that slot in time for it to be popular for me. But after going through this book, I'm actually pretty impressed. Let's open it up and, man, let's see what we got. First of all, this book is very well done. They didn't waste any space in here. Now, man, let's see where to begin. First of all, there is tons of stuff in here. Talks about the alien history, the war against Rita Repulsa, it has the Power Rangers directive, and it's very in-depth about character creation. And if you've played 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to see some elements that are very, very similar. Like when you attack, you have to roll over the target's defense, or you have your skill checks against a set difficulty number set by the DM. You have other things in here that are like perks, which are basically feats. And that similarity is very nice if you've ever played Dungeons & Dragons, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, because it makes this game easier to absorb. Now there are some, or a Zord. Okay, so anyways, there are some, actually there's quite a few differences between this and 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Now, both are made by Hasbro, who owns Wizards of the Coast, who owns Dungeons & Dragons. So it's to be expected there's going to be some kind of a I guess you say, crossing of the rules. But it's different enough to where it's not just a reskin of basic Dungeons & Dragons. Their core mechanic is, you, of course, using a d20 to determine your skill rolls and combat and all that stuff. But as you get better in your skills, you get to purchase extra D. So basically what happens is, if I've improved a skill above its most basic level, when I go to roll, it's a D20 plus a D2. And then later on, I can improve that D2 into a D4. Now, a D2 is basically a coin. Say heads, it's 1, tails, it's 2. And then you can increase it to a D4, D6, D8. So when you roll, let's say you have 2 levels of improvement in it. So you roll a D20 and a D4. And you add those together to get your result to beat your difficulty number, which isn't too bad. I love rolling extra dice. Players love to roll extra dice. And it's different enough from 5th edition to where I don't mind, because it's kind of unique, actually. I like it. Now, there's also something else, and I'm kind of jumping ahead to the skills because I'm kind of intrigued by it. I kind of like it. There's also, if you specialize, you can use that D20. If you specialize in a skill, you'd roll that D20 plus, let's say, I'm at a D4 extra for that skill, which means I'd be 2, I guess I've increased that skill twice. So I had D20, a D4, but on a specialization skill, not only do I get to roll that D20 plus that D4, I get to roll all the other dice beneath it. So then I get to roll a D2. So if my skill has been increased to 20 plus a D6, I also get to roll a D4 and a D2 and add those all together to get a number to go over my difficulty number, which, again, is actually kind of cool. And they do have a sliding difficulty, a shift table, basically. So if it's easier, they've got extra dice you can roll. You have an auto success. You have a critical success. You have an automatic failure. You have like a critical failure. And like with an automatic success, a player can opt not to roll and just take a basic success on something. Or he can choose to roll, and presumably, if he or she rolls then and they get a critical success, all that much better. But of course, I believe if you roll then and you tank it, then that's a problem. So I would probably generally just take the auto success. Character creation, I'm going to back up a little bit now because I talked about skills, kind of got ahead of myself. Again, I said there's perks and feats, but there are really, with Power Rangers, there is a lot of cool stuff. They get right into the character concept, choosing your origin and your role. your influences, and also too kind of which ranger you want to be. You want to be Blue Ranger, Yellow Ranger, Pink Ranger, Black Ranger. They really get into that, and there's a lot of stuff in here that it would be like 5th edition, like with your backgrounds and stuff, but I feel it's just maybe a little bit more detailed. You get just a little bit more meat out of it, which is pretty cool. And I don't know if it feels different to me because it's not fantasy. That could be it. Maybe it's just how it's written. But I feel like I get just a little bit more out of it in terms of background and your character's origin, maybe connections to other characters. And then it seems completely different when you go to choose what kind of ranger you want to be. I mean, it'll guide you, but you still have pretty much free range to pick which ranger you want to be. And I really like that. That's really cool. And when you do become a certain color ranger, of course, there are bonuses to your attributes. And it's really easy to do your attributes. It's a point buy system. You get 12 points. There's 4 attributes. You spread them across there. You're done. And so really easy, real quick to make a character. For skills, let's say a skill here. See, for each, once you get your essence scores down, which are your attributes, you get those skills. Let's see. So let's say I have a strength of 4. Then I get 4 points to spend on skills in that category. So just like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, like there are certain skills that fall under strength, smarts, speed, social. So there are skills that match up with those certain attributes. So when you're buying your skills, if you have more points in smarts, well, obviously, if your essence or your attribute for smarts is a 4, let's say, then you're going to have 4 points for skills, so you have more to work with there. Whereas if your speed is, say, a 2, then you're not going to have as much to devote to that. It just depends on what kind of character you want to do. Really easy to make a character, really easy to increase your skills. Now, I had to kind of read and reread the skill rank because I was like, what are they talking about? And at first I thought, oh, this is going to be bad. But no, it's actually pretty easy. It's written pretty clear, and that's another thing, is it can be the best role-playing game in the world, and if you write it poorly, if you describe it poorly, it's just not going to come across well. But I think this is pretty good. I really like it. And they're very in-depth. Power Ranger Origins, which are still more just more background for your character. It's really nice. And of course, they got these great illustrations in this book too. And it makes me, just the illustrations alone, I mean, go Power Rangers. I mean, I've heard that time and time again in the background, kind of as I grew up, other people are interested in it, or I hear it on TV and I'm like, well, that's kind of catchy. That's kind of neat. And you watch a little bit of it. I'd only watch, if I'm at my buddy's house or something and they're watching it, their kids are watching, I'd catch a little bit. I'm like, oh, Power Rangers, I know that's popular. It's kind of cool. But reading through this RPG, this makes me want to play the game. I am actually, even though I don't know anything about Power Rangers, other than the most basic things, this actually makes me very interested in Power Rangers now. This is cool. It's sci-fi, but it's not like super sci-fi. I guess maybe it is super sci-fi, but it's superheroes. Really, when you think about it, it's cool. And of course, there's actually a section here where it says it's morphin' time. I mean, and that's just cool. That's awesome. And they talk about all the different ranges. Oh, and it is like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. It is a level up system. You got 1st, 2nd, 3rd, all the way up to 20th level. And it talks about things like personal power capacity, idea points, strength increase, speed increase. All your essence scores can increase over time. And so again, if you have that familiarity with D&D, it's going to be real easy to get into this. You want to get a bunch of friends. Hey guys, you want to play Power Rangers RPG? Oh, that's great. Oh, we got learn a new system. No, you don't. Because if you know enough about 5th edition, you can play this. And here's the thing. If you don't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, you don't have to worry, because like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, it's written so plainly that it's not a problem. I could easily take this and I sit down with 3 or 4 people and start banging out characters right now. And I literally just kind of skimmed through the book last 30 minutes or so before I started making this video. And this is not hard. This is not hard. But I can tell it's going to be a lot of fun because they've got a lot of cool stuff in here. And it's something I think everybody's going to be very excited about. As I flip through this book here, let's keep going here. Yellow Ranger, Pink Ranger, White Ranger. And just like 5th edition, they all have their own special things at certain levels. Like the White Ranger at 7th level, he gets Sidestep. At 6th level, 11th, and 16th level, he gets Grid Power. You know, I'm not even sure what that stuff is, but it's very similar to 5th edition, where as your character's level, it's very simple. You look in the book, you see, oh, I'm at 5th level. I get extra attack. Cool. You jot it down, you're good, and you move on. It's not convoluted. It's very, very easy. And there's even more stuff like influences for your character, like being an artisan or a caretaker or having small town roots. There's a lot of extra material, extra background for the characters who are actually the Power Rangers, which I think is really neat. So I feel like there's even more, it's even more story-driven, more personal interaction-driven than just, hey, we're going to go fight the bad guys and call it a day. You know, we're going to go get the XP, you're going to get the loot. And I'm not dissing on any other RPGs because I play them all, and I mean all. Probably some of you haven't even heard of before. But it really feels like it's kind of designed to really work with your backgrounds more. You know, like in Dungeons & Dragons, you know, I got my guy, you know, my elf wizard, and, you know, he's got a hermit background, and, you know, that's it. But this has just a little bit more extra meat to their background, and it really feels like you really want to kind of role play a little more. I think this would be a really strong role-playing game, especially if you had the, actual RP, instead of just, you're playing a role-playing game and you do mostly combat, which I really like to have a lot of RP in my games, and this is one of those games where I think that's the case. Let's move on here. This is a bunch of skill stuff right now, flipping through, and social-based skills and all that. I won't bore you with all this stuff. Oh, and you can, of course, if you don't have a skill, you can always roll, but you have to roll 2d20, and it's the lowest value of that. So basically, you're rolling at disadvantage, and you got to take the lowest roll. So you better hope both those rolls are pretty high. That's pretty cool, though. This is really neat. Perks and powers, again, that's feats right there. Let's keep going. Okay, then there's a healthy equipment section, weapons and all that stuff. There's vehicles in here, and there's all these upgrades. I mean, it's just page after page. I don't know if you can see this. Let me turn around real quick. But there's literally just page after page of tables here. And it's all spelled out nice and neat. Just all sorts of cool stuff. Combined weapons, improvised weapons, even more weapon upgrades, power armor, there's all sorts of cool stuff. Vehicles. I mean, it just gets crazy. Talks about some of these different vehicles. And some of these, I know, are definitely from the show. It's not just stuff that they've made up. There might be a couple things that they made up specifically for the book, but there's, you know, if you like Power Rangers on any level, there's going to be a lot of callbacks to the show. And, of course, what do they have? Yes, they have the Zords, because anytime anybody talks to me about Power Rangers, they're talking about Zords. And I'm telling you, this has got Zords in it. I mean, what kind of Zords does it have? Oh, I don't know. All the ones that hook together into a big robot? Heck yeah! I mean, this is cool. Who doesn't like giant robots anyways? I mean, come on, man. I mean, look at this. Look at this. All the Zords, man. This is great. I mean, this was really cool. And customizing your Zord, the Combiner Zord, Dino Zords. I mean, come on. If you like Power Rangers and you're watching this video, and I've never watched Power Rangers before, I was never into it now, but I'm excited about this. You cannot be excited. You have to be excited about this because this is cool. Mastodon Dino Zord, Pterodactyl Dino Zord, Dragon Mega Zord. Come on, man. Everybody talks to me about Zords when they come in. They got the, I apologize if I've messed this up. the Quidian Battleborgs. Oh my gosh, this is cool. Zeozords, Zeo artillery tank. I mean, there is a lot of stuff in here. I mean, it's just page after page. And then they got combat for all this. This is neat. Oh, and something that's actually interesting is there's something in here under combat that says momentarily acting smaller. Now, basically, in Dungeons and Dragons, let's say you're a large creature, you can squeeze into a medium space. If you're a medium creature, you can squeeze into a small space, but your movement is reduced. Well, in this, you could actually squeeze yourself into space 2 sizes smaller. So that's pretty interesting. It's like a big creature. It's a huge creature really getting down there and trying to make it in there to get you. This is cool. So it's just some little rules tweaks that's a little bit different that kind of, after playing a bunch of 5th edition, kind of fresh, kind of different. So if I was running this, I was looking for a break from 5th edition, I don't feel like I'm just playing a reskinned game. And I like that. So, and I love Hasbro. I hate Hasbro. I love Hasbro. I hate Hasbro. But, it's that back and forth. But, of course, big companies trying to appeal to all sorts of people. And just from a game master standpoint, an experienced game master and player, this is pretty smooth. There's a couple spots where you might have to get used to the skill ladder or a couple other things where the dice shift. And that's a little different, and you might take a read through once or twice. But what's nice about any role-playing game that I always recommend to everybody is just use the meat of it first. Just go with the basic combat, the most basic things you can do in combat, with the most basic skill checks. And then just get used to that, and then start adding in some of this extra stuff, like the whole dice shift thing. And if you don't like it, man, throw it out. But I got a feeling you'll be using the dice shift table. And there's lots of modifiers to defense depending on what's going on. That's pretty cool. And they do address Megazord combat, time, movement, climbing, mounts, vehicles, all the usual stuff in a role-playing game. It's here. Conditions, just like Dungeons & Dragons, asleep, blinded, mesmerized, invisible. They talk about all these different things. They even talk about downtime. And, of course, they do talk about Angel Grove. And they've got a reasonably detailed accounting of Angel Grove from the Industrial Bay, the Cataro Hills, Train Canyon, Lake Angeles, the D Fielding Community Park. Everything's here. And I imagine this is all Milton Heights, the surf spot. I imagine this is everything from the shows. Absolutely everything from the shows. And from what I understand, there is a lot of material out there that you can really pull from. And I suspect probably seeing some other books relating to some of these other Power Rangers franchises, because it's not just this basic book. There's lots of, I know there are a lot of different other Power Rangers out there and different storylines and how it all comes together and how it works. And there's a depth of Power Rangers that most people just don't know. With me, again, even though I don't know much about it, I do know that it's very in-depth, because the people who love it are passionate about it and love to tell me about it. And I love to hear people tell me how passionately they love their hobby and give me all this extra information, even though I may not be familiar with the game or the show. There's a lot of history here. There's a lot of neat stuff. And of course, nothing would be complete without threats. Chunky Chicken. What else we got? We got all the Putty Patrollers, and on and off. I've seen Power Rangers enough to where just like on and off in the background, flipping around. Maybe I watch it for 5 minutes, and I remember seeing the Putty Patrollers in the show. Power Rangers fighting them. And again, I'm not a hardcore Power Rangers fan. I never really got into it. It just didn't hit me right at that era when I was growing up. But I think I may have actually kind of missed out. And I'm not just saying that for this video, because I wouldn't do that to you. I think it's pretty cool. Terror Toad gives you some helpful tips also as the DM. And also there is an adventure in the back of the book just to get you started. And it looks like everything can work on a 1-inch grid. So you could go out there and you could get any 5th edition or Pathfinder map or What Erase map and start scribbling on it and go to town. You could get some of the Pathfinder Starfinder maps. And for that matter, if your local FLGS plays HeroClix, you can get some HeroClix maps. Now the maps are the squares on the HeroClix maps are a little bit bigger. They're like 1.25 or maybe even they're 2 by 2. I can't remember. But you can still make that work. That's not a problem. It's just you don't have quite as much space for a character to move around because the squares are so big. But again, and a lot of those maps, a lot of HeroClix maps have a lot of good, more modern day settings or futuristic settings that you could easily use. And there are some maps that have more of a fantasy feel to them, or even an asteroid in orbit, or maybe a movie theater, or Doctor Strange's place, and they're usually, the HeroClix maps, they're usually double-sided, and that means 2 maps for the price of 1. You can't beat that. And of course, it does have Power Rangers character sheet in the back, and it's in a very, very photocopyable form. Because I had it when it's like a black character sheet, and then you got little white squares. No. They treat you right in here. This is super, super cool. And Greg, I really appreciate you encouraging me to, hey, you should make a review and use my book. Well, you know what? I did. And you know what? I like Power Rangers now. They're pretty cool. I might not go whole hog into all the merchandise that's out there or the shows, but I think I'm going to go back and watch a little bit and maybe ask some of my buddies. And I think I'm actually going to pick up a copy of this because this is actually pretty cool. That's pretty neat. Plus, it'll blow the socks off all my friends who are like, what, you want to play the what? I didn't think you grew up with Power Rangers. I'll be like, I didn't, but I think we should play this. Actually, I've got an Alien game, a much overdue Alien RPG game I got to run here pretty soon in April. So I'm actually finally getting around to that. All right. So I want to thank Greg for letting me review his Go Power Rangers role-playing game. You are not going to be disappointed with this. And I'm going to do another video talking about, I just like saying it now, the Go Power Rangers role-playing game, GameMasters screen. So, but I'm going to do this in another video, so that way this video isn't too long and I get another video. All right, so for me, it's going to be a few minutes, but for you, I want you to stay safe, play great games, and I'll see you real soon in the next video. Go Power Rangers! That's cool, man.